Hi everybody, my name is Angela Cleary. I'm a feminine empowerment coach and I specialise in healing after narcissistic abuse. So today I want to talk about trauma bonding. Trauma bonds are the unhealthy attachment or the false feelings a victim will get for their abuser. So this can happen in any kind of relationship, whether it's work, friendship, family member or romantic. But today I'm going to talk more about the romantic relationships. And this usually happens within a narcissistic relationship or any kind of physically or emotionally abusive relationship. When the abuser does this cycle of abuse and then positive reinforcement, this leads to confusion within the victim. And because of the love bombing that comes with it, this leads the victim to develop feelings or an attachment or an addiction, in a sense, to their abuser. Like the abuser will start off with this massive affection and this love bombing, buying excessive gifts, etc. And then they will start to degrade and devalue and abuse, verbally or physically, abuse their victim as a way of control. And then after the abuse, they will come back in with this love bombing, with this excessive affection, with these excessive presents and expensive gifts as a way of gaining control of their victim and keeping them dependent on them, on the abuser. And this is very common. Like we tend to, like, this has happened to me in 2 previous relationships, and I'll explain my experiences in a minute. But like this happens, you form this kind of, it's like an obsession in a sense with your abuser, because you see them through this false hope, I suppose. They're so shitty to you that you end up feeling childlike, codependent, insecure, losing all sense of self. And then they come back with this love bombing and you're like, oh, thank God. Do you know what I mean? They're after taking away so much of your essence and so much of who you are, that when they come back with the love, you kind of, it's like a relief for you, because you're like, oh my God, thank God they love me. Oh my God, like, you know, at least I'm not unlovable. And that's the way it is. It's like with this kind of thing, it's like, because we're afraid, when we're the victim, we're afraid of conflict. We're afraid that our abuser is going to leave us, because this is what we think a relationship looks like. So we put up with it. But because we're so insecure within, and this can be, our insecurities can come from unhealed core wounds, which can be from childhood, but can also be from the abuser enhancing those wounds by their abuse. Do you know, so if you've already got like abandonment wounds or codependency wounds or lack of self-worth, the abuser is going to play on this, and he or she is going to make you feel like shit until you're gone completely. And when you feel that weak and isolated and fearful and alone, when they come back with that love, you kind of breathe out a sense of relief, because you're like, oh my God, thank God they're not going to leave me. And that's the thing, I've noticed it with my past relationships. We could have massive, most biggest arguments where they will verbally abuse me and say the nastiest of things to me. And yes, okay, I'll say nasty stuff back, but like the next day I will apologize to them for treating me like shit, because I'm afraid that they would break up with me if I have a voice or if I stand up for myself. And that's how I was I was in a nature narcissistic relationship. And every time we had conflict, he was, oh my God, his words, like verbal abuse is as bad as physical abuse. They're both equal as far as I'm concerned. I suffered verbal abuse in that relationship, and I suffered physical abuse in another relationship in my 20s. And I know what both felt like. And I've developed a trauma bond with both of them. Like, that's the thing with trauma bonds. Like, it's crazy how it happens. Like, say when I was in my second relationship in my 20s, it lasted 1.5 years, but I wasn't that attached to him. I was more, my inner child was more in love with the idea of being in a relationship or of being loved. I felt I needed to be in a relationship. I needed to be protected. I needed to be minded. This is what my inner child was projecting. And but on the outside, I was still quite independent, and I was I wasn't as attached to him, and I wasn't obsessed with him or anything like that. You know, I felt, you know, I didn't feel like it was unhealthy. But after he was violent, I actually formed a trauma bond with him. I actually became more codependent on him. And I suppose I was afraid. I was afraid of him. But also because I was afraid of my life changing. And that's the hardest part of breaking out of a traumatic or abusive relationship. It's the change. And like with my HR narcissistic relationship, it was so scary. Like I developed that trauma bond with him. He was verbally abusive, and as I said, I was afraid of conflict, and I was afraid of us breaking up or him leaving me. So every time he was abusive, I apologized to him. And then, he'd come back with these nice things and these nice words, and then bang, he'd be abusive again. And that's what narcissists or abusers do. They do this to gain control of their victim by abusing and then love bombing, by making you feel so small that you're afraid to leave the relationship because you're afraid, you're fearful that no one else will ever want you. You feel like that their love is the only love that you deserve because they've made you feel like this is the only love you deserve. And this attachment, this obsession, this addiction, this unhealthy bond that you form with this abuser, it's their way of controlling you. It's their way of controlling you once and for all, and for you not to be able to break loose. Because the more they make you feel isolated, the more they make you feel insecure about yourself, and the more they diminish your self-worth, the more they have a hold on you. And the more that they have you stuck. And they come in with this love bombing then, and because you're so insecure and because your inner child is crying out to be loved, you're going to believe the love rather than the abuse. And that's the thing, we tend to forget, no matter how abusive the cycles get, when they come in with the love, we get to such a relief that we are loved and that we are lovable and that we're not going to be abandoned again, that we forget about the abuse. It's like, oh, they were just in a bad mood. Oh, it's okay, that's fine. He really does love me, or she really does love me. This is not healthy. And I believe that as well, trauma bonds last longer when we are still sleeping with a partner. So I believe that sex, it makes you more trusting towards the person. It makes you feel like you've got feelings for that person when there actually isn't any feelings there. This is why sometimes with one night stands, if you're unhealed, you're going to start to maybe pine after that one night stand and maybe pursue it, even though there was nothing actually there in the first place. And that's the thing. How can you have feelings for a complete stranger? I think it's because you formed some kind of a trauma bond through sex. And that's the thing. When you're sleeping with your toxic partner, you're taking on their energy, but also you're forming this attachment. You're forming this kind of trust. Intimacy makes us more connected to somebody, or feel more connected to somebody. So therefore, if we've got unhealed core wounds, and if we've unhealed abandonment wounds or inner child wounds, we're going to form a stronger bond, like a tighter bond with a person we sleep with. So therefore, if you're already after forming a trauma bond with your abuser and you continue to sleep with them, this will make that bond last longer. So even if you're trying to detach from the relationship, or you're seeing these red flags and you're saying to yourself, I need to wake up to this, I need to stop putting up with this abuse. But if you continue to sleep with that person, you're going to still think that you have feelings for that person. And I know this for a fact, because back in my HR narcissistic relationship, 2 years before we broke up, I had a massive trauma. And because of this trauma, we started fighting. Something that happened to me, he became more abusive towards me for something that happened to me out of that relationship. It was a different thing. But anyway, so because of that trauma, and because of the arguing that went on for the last 2 years of my narcissistic relationship, we stopped sleeping together. And I was also getting counselling for that trauma. So between my therapist telling me that he was narcissistic, and between the fact that because we weren't intimate, I was able to detach from that relationship. So within those 2 years, I fell out of love with him because I wasn't intimate with him. So you need to be mindful of that. If you are in an abusive relationship that you want to break free from, you need to break that bond and you need to stop sleeping with that person, because I believe that the trauma bond will last a lot longer if you continue to sleep with your abuser, because this trauma bond makes you feel like you have feelings for this person, but they're not real. Like when I was in that 8-year relationship, I wasn't in love with him. The real me was not in love with that man, but the person he created was. And he created a childlike, codependent version of who I was. She loved him. She had feelings for him, and she had that trauma bond with him. But because of the 2 years of us just arguing all the time and not actually being intimate with each other, I started to regain myself. I started to find myself again. And the real me started to come out. And with the counselling I was getting as well, and as I said, the lack of intimacy, I fell out of love with him, and I realised, because I started coming back to life, and I started to build myself again outside of him. And because of that, I realised how toxic he actually was, and then I was able to break that bond. But if we continue to sleep with our abuser, and this is my second relationship in my 20s, as I said, he was violent, and I became more codependent on him. And it took me, I think it was just over 2 months, I'd say, after that violent incident for me to leave that relationship. But because I'd become so trauma bonded to him, like towards the end, I was detaching, so I wasn't sleeping with him as much. But when we actually broke up, I started sleeping with him again, because I was like, I can't be alone. My inner child was screaming to be loved, and I was afraid that afraid of being alone, afraid of no one else wanting me. So I formed another unhealthy attachment to him by continuing to sleep with him. And I didn't realize for ages, obviously looking back, I can see that now. And at the time I didn't understand it, that I was still connecting with him and still connecting this trauma bond by being intimate with him. So eventually, when I actually stopped sleeping with him, I was actually able to get over him. Because as I said, sex forms unhealthy feelings when it's not the right person for you. If it's an abuser, if it's a narcissistic, abusive partner, if they're physically or mentally abusive, then any kind of intimacy with them is going to form unhealthy, false feelings. And when they love bomb you, you're going to form unhealthy, false feelings. And that's the thing, the fear that they instill in you because of all this abuse, they make you think that you will never be loved by anyone else. They make you think that they're the only people, that this is the only love that you deserve. And because of this, you're stuck. And you know no different for so long. You're in this cycle that keeps going around and round and round and round and round. And you form this addiction through this trauma bond to that cycle, because you're craving so much to be loved because of all this abuse on top of your childhood trauma, that any bit of love and acknowledgement that they finally do give you, you're just like, yes, thank God, thank God, thank God. And then you're afraid to move on, because you're like, I'm afraid to be alone because my inner child, at the time you obviously don't understand that your inner child needs to be nurtured. But you are so scared of trying again, especially if you've been in a relationship for a long time. And 8 years for me was a long time. Do you know, in the last 2 years of it, I was fighting my feelings about moving on. And telling even though I remember even saying to my therapist, it's fine, it's grand. Do you know, this is the way it's supposed to be, it's fine. So in other words, I was going to put up with the abuse, the arguing, and the no sex in my, I was only 26 or 27, I think, at the time. This was what I was going to live the rest of my life. This was what I had in my mind. this is it now. This is it for me. I'm going to stay in this loveless, abusive, sexless relationship for the rest of my life because this is all I know and this is all I deserve. And because he made me so codependent, I thought that was it. And I remember, like, there was actually 2 weeks between me saying that to my therapist and 2 weeks later going, no, I'm not doing it anymore. Do you know what I mean? She was shocked. Like, she genuinely thought, like, from what I said, I was staying in that relationship. 2 weeks later, I said, I'm not doing this anymore. You know, and so this is how vital it is for you to break that trauma bond by distancing yourself from the abuser. But you have to stop being intimate with them, because the more you're intimate, the more you think you still have feelings for them. You need to break that bond, and the only way you can break that bond is by detaching completely. Setting those boundaries. If you're with an abusive person, sleeping with them is going to be toxic for you. You're like, when you sleep with somebody, you're taking on their energy as well. So you're like, you know, if you're around negative, narcissistic, toxic people in the same room, you are going to take on that energy, especially if you're an empath. You're going to take on that shitty energy. So this is why don't hang around with these people. This is vital. But if you're sleeping with a toxic person, the way that the energy exchanges through intimacy, you're actually taking on their dirty, abusive energy into your body in the most intimate of ways. So if you want to break that trauma bond, and if you want to detach from that person, stop being intimate with them, for one, and stop falling for their lies. Narcissists don't change. They cannot change. Abusers do not change. I believe that they don't. They're not able to change. And if you believe, like, I remember, this is the biggest, I suppose, red flag, or this biggest thing I had to learn from narcissistic relationships. Because they go around in circles all the time, the abuse is intense, but then bang, the love is intense. You're like, oh, maybe they're in a bad mood, maybe it's going to be okay. And you kind of go, oh, maybe it won't happen again. And then bang, the abuse happens again. Then the love happens again. Then the abuse happens again. And it keeps going round and round and round and round and round. And especially being an empath, you want to help change this person, and you hope that one day the abuse will stop. It will not stop. It won't. It's just never, ever going to stop. The abuse cycle will continue. They will continue to try and control you. They will continue to love bomb you. And they will not let you release yourself. You need to step back. You need to watch for these red flags, understand what they're doing, and understand that they cannot change, and they will not change. So it doesn't matter who this person is, you know, how long you've been in a relationship with this person, whether it's even if it's a family member or work relationships. But if it's a relationship that you've been in, a romantic relationship you've been in for a long time, it is the hardest thing to break free from. But you have to. If you want to find yourself again, if you want to gain control of yourself again and find your independence again, find what love really is, break free from the toxic cycles that you've been in, break free from attracting abusers into your life. You don't deserve this. You do not deserve a love like that. And that's not love. You don't deserve abuse. You don't deserve this kind of treatment. There is better out there for you. So, like, if you're thinking, oh my God, no one will ever love me, this person doesn't love you. This person is abusing you. You need to get out, and there is better for you when you break that tie, when you choose yourself. The love you deserve will come in. Relationships aren't supposed to be abusive. Relationships aren't supposed to be scary. You're not supposed to be in fear all the time, feeling so low in yourself, so insecure, lacking self-worth, lacking all ambition in yourself. This is not what relationships are about. Relationships are supposed to help you grow. It's supposed to be mutual love, that you help each other grow and build each other up into the most confident, vibrant version of yourself. You know, if this relationship is making you feel shitty and low and victimized, get out. It's hard to get out, but get out and stop being intimate with this person. They will continue to keep control of you, and you will never ever break the cycle unless you break free and block that person. Stop going back. They're not going to change. They're not going to be. Abusers can't change. People like that do not change. And if you think, oh, they're being nice now, oh, this is lovely, oh, they're being nice again, and we're texting again, and they're lovely, and they're sending lovely pictures, and they're just being so affectionate, and they're buying nice things, maybe things will work out. No, it won't work out, because this is fucking fake. This is false. This is what they do to lure you back in. But if a person has been abusing you consistently throughout the relationship, this is not going to change. And if you break up and then they're trying to pull you back in, lure you back in these ways, this doesn't mean they've changed. This means that they're going to bring you back in and fucking abuse you twice as much again. They don't change. Narcissists can't change. They cannot fucking change. And sorry for cursing, but I learned that the bloody hard way. I really did. And every time there's a good cycle, every time that there's that bit of love that comes in from them and they're starting to show you, oh, this is a nice, Jesus, they have changed. And the amount of times I've said that, oh my God, maybe they have changed. And then bang, to be fucking wrong again. No, they cannot change and they will not change. So be aware of this. Break that bond. Distance, set boundaries, and stop being intimate with your abuser. Because you cannot break those unhealthy, false feelings for this person unless you break that intimacy and you start setting boundaries. Because they are false feelings. I spent 6 to 7 years out of an 8-year relationship thinking I loved my narcissistic abuser. But the person he created loved him. The real Angela did not love him and will never love somebody like that. The person, if you're not, that's the thing. You think you've got feelings for this person. The person they created isn't the real you. So this childlike, codependent version of you is the person that has the feelings. The real you is in there somewhere, and the real you is strong enough to break away from this cycle. The real you is strong enough to understand that these are not real feelings, that this is not a real relationship, and that you do not deserve this abuse. So set those boundaries. Find the real you again. Find your strength. Find your courage. Find your independence and find your power. Find that love within yourself. Reparent your inner child and love that child within you so that you can now love yourself. And start building your life up again. Away from this kind of abusive patterns. And seek the love you truly deserve, because it's there waiting for you. It's waiting for you once you choose yourself and once you break this trauma bond. And it just takes one step. Just walk away and don't believe their lies when they come trying to suck you back in. Because that's all it is. It's lies. It's false. The abuser, the narcissist does not change. They will never change. So don't put yourself through it again. If you've been strong enough to break that tie, do not start responding to their messages thinking, oh my God, maybe they've changed. Because they do not change and they will never, ever change. So be strong, be firm with your boundaries and choose yourself. And I promise you, once you do, and once you cut that tie and don't believe their false lies again, the life ahead of you is so much more beautiful. The strength ahead of you is so much more beautiful. The independence ahead of you is so much more beautiful. And it's there. I promise you it's there. It took me a long time to see it, but my God, life is so much more beautiful when you break free from thinking these kind of relationships are the norm, because they're not. And you deserve so much better. So thank you so much for listening today, and I hope this resonates. If it does, please like and share, and please subscribe to my channel. And if you would like help in your journey, please book me for a discovery call today, and I would love nothing more than to help you on your path. Thanks. Bye-bye.